Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of In the Pit with Lobo Tiggre. Our victim of the day is Todd Hilditch. He's CEO of RLYG.V. I've actually known Todd for a long time. My readers made a bunch of money with him on a lithium play back in my Casey research days. And now he's a gold guy in Nevada, and he's here to tell us about it. I've got questions, of course. So, Todd, why don't you go ahead and give us an overview, and then we'll dig right in.
Sure, thanks, Lobo. And I was actually a gold guy before a lithium guy, now a gold guy. So the circles have collided and come back. Riley is an exploration company focused specifically in the state of Nevada. We have two projects. We're underway. We're funded. And we've got a great team, in my opinion, of names which we can go through if you'd like. But we're just really at the sort of second inning of our game and eager to get going.
All right. Well, so give us a little bit of history then on the company. You look at the stock chart, and it was trading by appointment until very recently, and even now it's light. So what happened? This isn't an RTO, but this was a shell that you put new properties into, or how did you get here?
Yeah, so funny that you start with the lithium, because the same folks that were part of that lithium company 10 years ago, it seems like so much longer, were the same folks that put together at the end of selling that to Taliesin Lithium was, okay, let's put a new vehicle together. We did put that together 6 or 7 years ago, and we just let it sit, and we were waiting for the right opportunity. 6 to 7 years later, moving into the gold space, we decided that it was time to jump back in, and we looked for three properties, different advanced levels, etc., and landed on these two. So the good news is the structure of the vehicle that we initiated was extremely tight, and it remains extremely tight with 25 million shares issued. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is we're an extremely tight vehicle, and it's now time to get out and tell our story so we can expand the horizon of shareholders, investors, those who care to learn about a new story. So we're trying to fix the trade by appointment, but we reverse engineered it just to make sure that our structure was outstanding out the gate, and now we're going to walk out the gate and tell our story and beat our chest a little bit more.
All right. So not to put you on the spot here too much, but really, as a newsletter writer, I couldn't even talk about this. I wonder if it's risky to even do this interview with that trading appointment. What's the step forward here? Do you do a financing with retail participation just to get more retail volume there, or how do you make this more investor friendly on the trading side of it?
Just on the trading side of it, well, you're right. The structure is so tight that in the last couple of weeks, with a little bit of talk on the company, moved the market up, quite easily. Does it have the ability to sustain that level? That's a good question. We do have drilling going on, which hopefully will substantiate a good reason to be an entry point. Is the entry point a month ago at 25, 35 cents, or is the entry point at 50, 60 cents? That'll be the truth serum will come, I think, with our work. We do have two good projects which we'll get into, but at this stage, it's a great question. I think if we can justify with the work that we're doing, then the entry point will be wherever the entry point is, and at some given point we will do a financing. Probably not in the next 3-6 months, but that said, it could be. If we have success on the drill bit, we may look to do a financing.
All right, so I won't beat this to death, but just real quick to put a period at the end of the sentence there. Say you have success with the drill bit, and this will attract attention. Okay, that would create some volume, but that would imply somebody's willing to sell. If your structure's so tight and the results are good, why would anybody sell?
Well, that's a good point, and I cannot completely answer the question and put a nail in that coffin. I would suspect that our first round of financing in October at 20 cents, we're now trading at double to triple that. That if we continue to bring new buyers into the market and new audiences and new eyes, that at some point the earlier folks will maybe come off of some of their stock. But to date, they've been pretty tight. So I'll have to do a better job of explaining my story in the marketplace to get more people buying, and then we could get more people selling.
Well, hopefully this will be a start. All right, so let's talk about your rocks then. Why these particular properties? I looked at your presentation, and I got to say that the case wasn't terribly compelling. There's a lot of closeology there, right? You know, we're close to pipeline, we're close to this. Um, you know, why these two properties? You want to give us the you know, you kept this on the back burner until you got these two properties, but frankly, I don't see anything to just jump up and down here about.
Well, hopefully I can shed some light on that. The first of the two projects, and the one that we're currently drilling, the one that's not pipeline but it's toe cop, it's a property that sat on the books of a balance sheet of a junior company for 10 years without any work whatsoever. The work that they completed in 2011 was with an earn-in joint venture with a Cisco. And a Cisco at the time, if you remember in that timeline, the work that they were doing in this joint venture was literally months before the Goldcorp hostile takeover, and then the subsequent, you know, three-way merger with Humana and Agnico. What an amazing story for them. But in our case, the work that they did, there was a 20-hole drill program. That's it. That's the only work that had been done on this TOCOP project. And in the end, that company that was working in Global Geoscience, which is now Ioneer, in the lithium business, ironically, we keep circling back to lithium, they moved on a different direction. And, you know, I think you would agree, and most people would agree that, you know, if you had $1 for every time you found a property that was just kind of lost off on the side and someone took some time and energy to come back to it, and made something of it. I mean, that's what we think is happening here. The original drill holes that really got us excited were 12 meters of 2.5 grams per ton. There was another one that was 30 meters of 0.7. I mean, back 10, 11 years ago, that might not have got everybody too excited, but it was enough of a sniff that our geologist, Charlie Sulfrian, who spent 23 years with Barrick, said, wait a minute, this is a gem that maybe hasn't been worked on long enough. So we did the traditional work, you did the mapping, the sampling, and what we found was the historic sampling had up to 34 grams per ton with the previous operator, but we were able to come up with 19 grams per ton, 16 grams per ton. We did channel sampling, 5 meters of just a little bit over 5 grams per ton. And so these and 3 meters of 6 grams per ton. So these type of numbers were intriguing to us at surface, and the decision to understand what they drilled, why they drilled it, where they drilled it, orientation then became a much bigger picture for us. And what we found is that the orientation of the drilling seems to have been, I should say, more parallel to the vein sets, which are mapped over 2 kilometers on our property. So we have reoriented the drilling coming across the veins, and Charlie Sulfrian, our VP Exploration, will have a better understanding of the orientation, how these veins look at surface. Do they undulate across? We see them over 2K. We get that. That's no problem. But what happens subsurface? And I can get into a little bit more of the how the formation came and the akin to, but I think to answer your question, it's exciting. It just had been ignored.
All right, so let me understand the target here then. I'm looking at those grades, and 12 of 2.5 is, you know, interesting. It's not, you know, a much broader intercept would make for an interesting open pit, but not 12 meters, you know, 18 meters of 125, 14 meters of 0.94. These are sort of in between. They're not big enough to make for an open pit, but you're talking veins. But if we're thinking veins, then I go back to the grades, you know, 2.5, 1.25. That doesn't look like a high grade vein type deposit to me. So what is the target? Is the target intended to be veins? And if so, you think that they just didn't drill the high grade areas, or why would these veins excite us?
Well, they either didn't come across the vein set as their true grades, or they were drilling parallel to the veins and weren't coming across them. So, and this isn't a throwing mud at previous operator. They were doing great work, and they're great people.
They just started. If you didn't know the orientation, you got to start somewhere.
Exactly. And so and it wasn't just Charles Sulfrian on our side that sort of relooked and sort of tried to reorient this. Dr. Richard Silito, we've had an amazing calls with him. He feels the same way. Ruben Padilla with Talisker was on the property in the early days with Cisco. And both gentlemen were not aware of the further drilling that occurred 4 to 5 holes after they had moved on. And when we recollected them and went through the fact, they didn't know some of these drill holes existed. And we had an amazing Zoom call going through all of the geology and the orientation, and they agreed with our geologist. I mean, the easiest thing in our industry to say is, oh, that last guy and that last company, they didn't drill it properly. And then that's not what we're suggesting. They did a great job with the information they knew, but with a little additional information we know. Now, the target here is not a typical Nevada style. This is a granitic intrusion related gold system. Not to get overly technical, but literally there was 5 to 7 kilometers below the surface, there's granitic magma that came up, and as it cooled near the surface, at the very top of this carapace, and I liken it, because I like dessert, I liken it to the ice cream cone that you've dipped in chocolate and you've got that crust on top. Well, if you tap that and you crack it, that's similar to what we see here. Is the vein sets at surface are those cracks in the very top part of the pluton. And so for our guys to understand what this will look like, this is very early days, and those 19 gram per ton surface samples are good. Some of the drill samples are good. Some of the trench samples are good. But what we need to understand is what that pluton below entails. Will this be high graded surface, lower grade bulk tonnage? And this is a very well studied geology relative to the tintitic belt in up north here. You've got Dublin Gulch, which is part of the Victoria Gold Eagle deposit. You've got Kinross and Fort Knox. So those oddly enough, and a long ways from Nevada, those are the type of systems and the targets that we're seeing down here. In fact, we've just recently brought a technical advisor by the name of Ted Wilton, who's worked both at Dublin Gulch and at Fort Knox for Kinross, and he also sees this same sort of genesis and model that we're targeting. So we'll find out what this looks like with a little bit more work, and as the drill results start to come to fruition.
All right. So I noticed on one of the slides, it looked like you have quite a few wiggly little red lines there for those veins mapped at surface. So the concept here, sorry, I'm just an evil scum of the earth newsletter writer. I'm not a geologist, even though I play one on TV. So the pluton is less interesting to me than how big could this be? And the thesis, not to put words in your mouth, is looking at all those wiggly red lines would be that they add up to a significant strike length. If they're mineralized, then this could be big. Is that the idea? That's what you want to test? And is that being drilled now, or are we drilling for geology to understand the pluton?
No, we're drilling surface for the vein structures. We are not testing pluton at this point. The 20-hole program that we have permitted is specifically to target those veins at surface and subsurface, obviously. We're drilling to about 400 to 500, I use feet, 400 to 500 feet typically in these holes to understand what their setting is. Do they shallow out? Do they deepen? That type of thing. So no, the pluton is sort of secondary, and the veins are certainly priority. We have about 22 square kilometers that we've added. Charlie believes that the strike length beyond the squiggly red lines that we're seeing, which is only maps showing give or take about 1 kilometer to 1.5 kilometers at surface on that map that you see on our website. That's the area that we've been able to focus on so far, and we do intend to expand that and try to trace those vein sets longer. But they're pretty good strike length. And if you look at Fort Knox as an example, the Kinross mine, you can take that sort of 9 million ounce deposit from I think it's 600 meters by 1,000 meters, and plop that literally right into our land package, and it fits very easily. So I'm not suggesting the two are completely comparable, but the ideology and the target and the size, we could easily manage if so.
It is kind of funny to think about. I don't think I would make a big deal of it. It doesn't mean that much, but it is funny that the ATAC guys and others up there are looking for Carlin-style mineralization in the Yukon, and you've got, northern-style examples for your Nevada project down here.
Yeah. No, exactly. And then the zip codes when the formations they didn't care what it looks like. And Ken Snyder, who's been a wonderful aid in our Terrico days. We didn't talk about Terrico, but he would always tell me, especially when related to like Midway Gold Spring Valley, he would say, Todd, we don't care what anybody calls it. If there's gold there, there's gold. Okay.
I've not met him, but I've heard stories. But okay, so all right then. Not to dismiss the Pluton, then though, is the theory then that I mean, you got this giant granitic intrusion. The whole thing is not going to be mineable. But is the idea then that underneath the distal veins that there might be some enrichment or a capping there? And if so, if there's a big deposit under there, wouldn't the next step be geophysics rather than drilling for that?
That's what we're going to be doing. So you might play a geologist on TV only, but you've certainly mapped out what we're doing. Yeah, I think the initial program was to get a better understanding on the work that had been done drilling prior to our arrival, and test the theory that they were drilling with versus against, and then try to get a better understanding, and then do the geophysics to map where the intrusives are to match exactly where you're going with is what's the bigger picture beyond, 1 million ounces of vein at surface, what's below. So yes, that's next. We do have one geophysics prior study that was completed, but Charlie wants to complete some additional, and he's in the works of trying to figure out which one he'll do right now.
Okay, so you're drilling on Tokop now, a 20-hole program. Can you, without disclosing anything that's insider information, can you tell us about how that's going, how far into it, and when might the first batch of results come out?
So first set of holes should be out in the next few weeks. We are about a half a dozen holes in. Drilling's been a little tougher than we expected. Good news is we had a rig and we were able to start, which is a grind in Nevada and in a lot of places, as you know. So the rock is hard, it's granite, we're doing core only. The work that had been done before us was RC. So from an orientation of the core standpoint, Charlie really wanted to focus on core. Bless you. So in the basis of him understanding what type of rock we're seeing, it's all core. So long story, we should be drilling here through the summer, we expect, and then next 3 weeks we should have 2 to maybe 3 holes out.
That makes sense. And will you be doing oriented core?
Yes.
Yeah, but to understand, given what your goals here in this initial phase are and the understanding, that makes perfect sense to me. Okay, well, I get it, and good luck with that. Let's talk a little bit about Pipeline West. It might, I looked at that on the map, and it might just be the scale or something, but I could have sworn that I was on that same property with White Knight. Did they used to have this land package like 15 years ago?
White Knight may have. I don't recognize that name, but Allegiant certainly did, going back, oh gosh, I don't know the years, but it was well beyond probably 3, 4, 5 years ago. I think part of the issue out here is there's been a few operators that have come in over the past 10, 15, 20 years. A lot of the focus that we've been able to identify through the data has been more on the northern part of the property, upper plate. There's been some silver mineralization. More recent, as you extend without a map, I'm waving my arms, but as you go from the southeast down sort of Cortez up through Pipeline, which is part of the Nevada Mines overall complex, then you have ourselves, and then Ridgeline Minerals is off the northwest flank of ourselves, and they tapped in December into the lower plate. So I think that there's maybe a better time for raising money, a better time for working on some of these projects, and for us, it'll be more the southern part of the project, which, as far as we can tell, have maybe had 2 holes in it that have gone down into lower plate rocks. So it hasn't been tried, tested, and failed. Tried, tested, and been successful. But I think there's a timing, as you know, in our space is, ability to get work done, ability to finance, and I think some of earlier groups that have been down there might have been challenged by some of that.
Yeah. It may just be close and not the same one. I looked at the map and the relation to pipeline. It just looked like I could have sworn I was standing there at one point. And I don't remember whether they got around to drilling. They got distracted by what turned into Lindero down in Argentina,
Okay. Yeah.
and Mansfield and all that. So, and then that's now Fortuna. But okay, so I looked at the presentation. I didn't see any past drill results on that. The thesis here is just the hunt for lower plate blocks, upthrust horse blocks, or what would be when you get to this? I understand you're doing toke up first.
Yeah.
When you do get to this, what's the thesis here that would be tested?
Well, the thesis would be no different than what we see with our neighbors off in Nevada mines off the southwest flank, and really we adjoin. So the program, once we get to it, and I have to be completely open and kimono honest here, with the amount of time and energy we've had at TOCOP, we have not identified a drill plan. We're trying to set up for the geophysics here as well. Hopefully this summer, and then into the fall, we would look at what a drill program would look like. They do get sort of more snow down this way, so we might be pushed to the spring. But it would be absolutely no different than what we see next door, and including off to our ridgeline off to our northwest, because they're also targeting the Wen band. So I'll go back to my I like dessert program, because it's not an ice cream, but it's like a layer cake. And the Wen band is the formation that is mined in the Cortez and pipeline system. In our property, to the best of our knowledge, and the historical work has shown that the Wen band is not as deep in our property setting as it may be in other parts surrounding us. So our target is 300 to 600, 700 meters, not well beyond that, which can be a challenge and very expensive and can hurt a junior in a heartbeat. But the Valmy, Horse Canyon, kind of Roberts thrust, and then the Wen band actually rises to the surface to a point where over at Cortez complex, that's where they're producing from. So the formation is known, very well documented, obviously down in this area. It's a matter of getting some drill holes on the south part of our property to identify Wen band. We only have knowledge of one drill hole that touched into the Wen band, and it didn't come in at where a high angle feeder met with the formation, which is where we will be targeting and where geophysics will be extremely important. But there was a 0.7 gram per ton, not earth-shattering stuff, but it was there, and there was gold mineralization within that Wen band. But one hole is not going to make us excited, so we're going to have to get our geophysics done and get our targeting done on those high angle faults to try to intercept. I mean, literally, as we join the Gold Acres property, our boundary now meet, it's 600 meters away from the Gold Acres pit, which and resource, which is just short of 1 million ounces at 2.77 grams per ton. So I don't know if we need 2.77 to get super excited, but we need something better than 0.7.
Understood. All right. Just a quick question. Either of these properties on Forest Service land, or is it all BLM, or how are we looking on the permitting
BLM
side?
Private. Yeah, BLM and private. And after spending 20 some odd years down in Nevada, and with all due respect to the folks that go after Forest Service land, and there's probably an amazing and copious amount of gold in those regions, but it just makes it so much difficult and much more time to get permitted. In fact, on our board, we've added a permitting expert that I've worked with in the past. So we're private and BLM public, and happy for that.
All right, good to hear. Good to hear. All right, so the deliverables this. Sorry, before I go on to the bottom line of the deliverables, are you looking to pick up more properties as well, or just happy to sit with what you've got for now?
Yeah, never say never. We haven't gone through maybe some of our corporate folks, but William Lamb is our chairman, very well attuned, as you know, work with Lundin and Lucara Diamonds, a very smart mining individual. And we've had the mandate of, okay, if something shows up or we find something that will fit into our structure, we'll always look at it, never say never. But right now we do kind of have our hands full, but you never know.
Okay, so deliverables for this year are the drill program you're already committed to, and then possibly more drilling later in the year in the pipeline area, or anything else that you can
No,
say is on the way?
you're dead on, right? Drilling at Tocop. I'm going to call it phase 1, and then we could extend into a phase 2. So let's just call it drilling at Tocop overall. Geophysics at both Tocop and with Pipeline West. And drilling relative to Pipeline West is, I think it'll be a struggle to get it in this year. Truth be known, I would suspect we'll get all of the geophysics work. Adding to our geological team is also difficult. Getting a rig is difficult, let alone adding people. So I would be worried about stretching our bandwidth on trying to jam a drill program in a Pipeline West. So that will most likely stretch into the following year, but we'll be ready by the time that happens.
I'm actually really glad to hear that, Todd, and I'll do a little brief editorial if you don't mind. You hear all these IR guys out there saying, "Oh yeah, we're exploring aggressively," and I always picture in my mind, what does that mean? There's a geologist going on like, what is aggressive exploration? Well, what it means actually, though, if you think about it, what it means is not calm, careful, deliberate, not making sure you don't put the cart before the horse. That's what aggressive means.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, we've got so many people, we've got so much budget, so many drills, and we're not going to go drill before we're ready. I'd much rather hear that. If I was a shareholder worried about, how you're deploying my money to increase shareholder value, I'd much rather hear we're not going to get ahead of ourselves than, we're aggressive.
No, I've known you for 10 years. Our first company we started in 96, and it was Terraco Gold. I mean, I stayed with that for 25 years, and yes, we had ups and downs, and yes, it changed from an exploration company to a royalty company. But I think one of the reasons why we've been successful in the market is, do we hit home run after home run after home run? No, we don't. I mean, the odds of that in our industry are slim, but there are some guys that are really good and lucky. In our case, especially when raising capital, with the Haywood Securities of the world, with the Cormark, like with other groups, we try for the most part to do exactly what we say we're going to do. We might be off a few months here and there, but I can't sit in front of a broker when we're looking for funding and tell them that we're going to get all this work done in a year when it's physically impossible. I would have been out of this industry a long time ago. So we have a mandate. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. That sounds pretty easy to go by, but don't overpromise for fear you'll underdeliver. And just, if people aren't happy with what we're doing, there's a lot of us out there, happily go along and find a better opportunity if you think it exists. But we're going to do this methodically. It was 25 years with Terraco, with Solar's lithium and Taliesin, which we first met on. That was 16 months. It was extremely fast, but the stars lined up and et cetera. So in our case, we've got good people, we've got good financial backing. We've never rolled a company back. We've always tried to act like an investor because we are. And I wouldn't want someone lying to me and telling me they're going to do work in a month.
All right. I'm glad to hear. I'll come back to that question, actually. But before we move on from the deliverables, all of this work is paid for now? You've got the money in the bank to cover this?
For the first drill program, absolutely yes. And the geophysics, yes. Planning for the fall, we'd most likely have to look at going to the market or a strategic financing of sort sometime over the next 1
Well,
2
I
3.
guess if I can jump in and lobby there, going back to our first question, if you're producing the results, I'm sure there'll be plenty of iBankers and others stepping forward and saying, our institution, here's this bought deal. But if you need trading volume, you need to make sure that you leave room at the table for retail.
Yeah, agreed. And we didn't at the beginning on structure. In fact, the first financing, 82 of the 86 subscribers were folks that I've done business with for a minimum of 2-3 years. So, but you're right. And that's part of our getting out and telling our story now is we're going to need some retail, 100%.
Okay. Well, I think I have a pretty clear picture, and I hope our audience does too, of what you're trying to do. I always want to ask the skin in the game question, which you alluded to before. If you want us to put our hard-earned money, I don't own your stock. You're trying to convince me to buy your stock. How much of your money have you got in there at risk alongside mine if I put mine in?
Between my wife and I, we've written checks for about $175,000, $180,000. Now that's not millions, but we've only raised three. Management is about 14% of the overall structure at this point. But I've got skin in the game. I've never, this is a downfall for me. It's not your question, but I'm going to give an answer that is beyond that, is, even with my Terrico, when I buy a position and I'm involved in management or a directorship, I don't sell a single share till the rest of the shareholders sell. And I've done that with 4 of the companies that we've started and sold. And I think others might say that's crazy, you need to take money off the table. I can't do that until the ship is in better financial hands, better technical hands, and that's been my mandate. I might live in a bigger house, a fancier house, if I did it the other way, but I don't believe in that.
Well, music to my ears. I find myself cringing at times when you see insider selling. It's not that much, and maybe they got a kid that has to go to college, and you can't not pay your rock stars. I get that, but I also understand that investors look and they see the insider selling. It just doesn't rub the fur the right way. So I salute you for that. I think we have a good overview, and good luck with the Truth Machine. Let us know how it turns out.
Thank you very much, Lobo. I really appreciate it. It's good to see you again.
Yeah. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed or found value in what you just saw, and you're watching this on any sort of social media, please do hit the like button and the share link. Send this on to anybody you think might be interested. That helps us out a lot. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do hit the subscribe button as well. The number of subscribers helps us get more valuable content to you as well. On the subject of subscribing, I'll quickly say that if you're not a subscriber to our free weekly Speculators Digest, I encourage you to sign up. I promise if you do, we will not send you a flood of daily advertisements. You get one free weekly digest with original research not published anywhere else. Check it out at independentspeculator.com. Thank you and have a great day.